Why do we take observations in the EYFS, and why does it matter so much? Hello and welcome back again to my channel. If you're joining me for the very first time, you are welcome. And if you're an old returning subscriber, you are absolutely welcome as well. Now, what is the hype about observations in the EYFS? So people would have heard me go about observation, and how important it is in the EYFS. So somebody might ask me, what is the hype? What is all this talk about observation as well? Observation is an essential skill that you have to learn as an EYFS teacher. Why do we do observations? Why? Why do we do observations is the question. I have my notes, so I'm going to be reading some of it here. So we do observations to sort of understand what children know. Okay, so sometimes two children might be playing and you're just listening on their conversation, and within that you might find out that a child knows a lot more about gravity, the subject of gravity, than you would have normally thought. Okay, now as a teacher, that is a very useful information, because you know that you then begin to plan your next steps to help that child in that learning in that area. Okay, so rather than maybe when you introduce gravity to the class, for instance, or anything to do with gravity as an EYFS, then you know that that child is sort of has more knowledge and more understanding, and then you think of ways you can extend that knowledge as the teacher when you come across that topic. Or even without coming across that topic, you might want to recommend books, or when you're giving them books to go home, you might be giving the child books that have such topics to try and help develop that interest in the child. Now, observations also help us to understand how children learn, and of course I said what interests them. It also helps us understand how children learn. So when you observe a child, you will know a child who learns by doing. Okay, you'll be able to tell a child who catches more by doing. You'll be able to tell a child who learns more by just paying attention. You'll be able to you'll be able to learn a whole lot of skills and things about that child when you observe them. And as I said from the beginning, it also helps us to plan the next steps. Okay, the next steps to help further the child's learning. Now, observation is not solely about collecting lots and lots of data, or writing a long essay, or writing 1,000 things. No, it's not all about that, okay? When you're taking observations, you have to learn how to do it, how to write it, and what medium you're going to be taking the observations, okay? So it's about noticing and responding to the learning that is actually going on within that observation. Okay, so you're not just observing everything and anything and writing it. No, when you see key moments, key things that have to do with the child's learning, key things that have to do with the child's personality, key things that have to reinforce certain behavior, so those are the things that you sort of note down or you highlight in your whatever medium that you're using to do this observation. Now, what do you observe? Somebody might ask me, well, what do I observe then? I've already mentioned some of it as I've gone along. I'm just going to highlight those again. So what do you observe? You observe the child's interest. Okay, so you might notice that a child is very interested about dinosaurs. Now, we had this once in one of my classrooms. So this child was very particular about dinosaur. Now, the child was a very reluctant learner. But when I noticed that the child was very particular about dinosaurs, what I did was I went on, and when we're about to do writing, I printed papers that have dinosaurs on the border to try and help draw interest to that writing. And then also I came out with a notebook, and I said, this is your personal notebook. So within this, you can draw, you can write, and tell me all about dinosaurs. So encouraging the child to write. As I said, he was a very reluctant learner, especially very reluctant writer, but he had a whole lot of information about dinosaurs. I mean, he knows all the dinosaurs in the world. He can tell you the different names. He tells everything. So the way we got this child to actually love writing and to write was to find things to do with dinosaur, themes around dinosaur, and that was how that child was able to come out of his shell. So this was basically purely from an observation. We noticed that this was what his interest, this was what he liked. Now, engagement. Okay, we observed the engagement. So we observe how deeply they're involved into something. So for instance, if we observe that a child really loves playing with Play-Doh, okay, so we observe that whenever the Play-Doh is out on the table, this child always gravitates towards Play-Doh. So we know that this child has some might begin to then deduce from that. Does he have sensory problems? Does he have sensory issues? Is he drawn to certain materials and things like that? So these are where we observe things to help us understand a child better. Okay, and then we also see the engagement on how they solve things. So maybe you give them a task as a group, and immediately one child decides to, oh, let's do it like this, or let's do it like that, let's find a way to solve it, or let's find a way to open, or you're watching them play and there's a bottle with a lid, but they don't know how to do it, and then this child says, oh, let's see if we can turn it like this and we might open it. So you can begin to understand how they problem solve situations and all of that. We also observe the language, okay? You observe the language. So what are they saying? How are they communicating? Is the child communicating more by actions? Is the child communicating more by words? And if they are speaking, how clear is their word? Are they using high vocabulary that children their age don't use when they're communicating? Are they showing high vocabulary skills are a bit more complex for them? And then you know that, okay, this child has a bit more knowledge on language, or are they using languages that they've heard maybe from lessons or things like that? So you're also observing their communication. How do they interact with their peers, okay? How do they communicate with their friends in the classroom? So that's how we're observing language. You also observe their social interactions. How are they collaborating, negotiating with their friends? Are they sharing? Are they coming to an agreement? Okay, we both want the same thing. I'll have it first and then you have it later. Or are they throwing tantrums? So again, you're observing their social interactions. Are they the kind of children who would communicate their feelings or their emotions to their peers? Maybe if they've done something that they don't like, is that child the one that would communicate that, or the child will stomp away and go and roll up in a corner? Okay, so you are also observing those as part of your observations. You're observing their skills. So what skills are they showing? What skills maybe in the area of literacy, in the area of mathematics? Are they showing fine gross motor skills? Are they able to use a pencil properly, independently? Are they able to manipulate objects? Are they able to balance? Are they able to walk straight? Are they, you're observing all of these things. You know, their creativity. How creative are they? If you give them a pile of blocks, what would they come up with? What would they say within that? So these are the things that you also observe in observation. Now, somebody might say, that is quite a lot of things to observe. No, you're not observing all of this at one go, okay? So, and you're not observing every child. Now, as a teacher, you definitely pick snippets of things here and there, as well as your TA coming back and feeding some of these things to you. But sometimes you have children that you focus on per day or per week. So today you are focusing on Amy and Charles and Lydia and Paul. So these are the 4 children that you're observing for the whole day. So your idea as a teacher or TA is that you find opportunities to sort of look at what the children are doing, gravitate towards them, or if you hear any of them say something or do something that is spectacular, then you note those down. So sometimes we have key children that we observe per day or every 2 days or per week. So you're not doing all of this, and sometimes you might have areas. Of course, if you haven't looked at the EYFS early learning goals, please go do, because those are the 7 key areas that we use in our observations, and for those are the bedrock of EYFS. Okay, so those key areas are some of the things that you are observing and looking out for as you go along. Now, how do you record your observations? So we've looked at what you observe. How do you now record your observations? So you might, in your setting, this varies from setting to setting, okay? So it's no fast rule that you do one thing. Each setting has a different way. So some settings might decide to use sticky notes, okay? So you have your key children, you have what it is you're observing. Sometimes just give you a blank thing. These are the 4 children for today. observe these 4 children. So it's not up to you what you write and what it is that you're looking out for, or what it is that you're tuned to within that time. But again, if you understand the early learning goals and you do it at the back of your head, then you can easily spot those things within the day that you're observing that child. So you might try to use sticky notes. You write your little sticky notes, you stick them on your clip chart or your clipboard, and at the end of the day, you go jot them down somewhere where you jot them, or at the end of the day, you put it in the child's file to be able to compile and build a picture of the child. Now, you might also use photo or video evidence. So some settings, I mentioned in my last video, some settings use, they are quite app-based. So they use certain educational apps to help them with observation. And some of these apps are already linked to the early learning goals. So basically, if you see something to do with language and communication, you write it and then you tap which early learning goals it is. So then it automatically records that in the child's record and keeps it. Now, you might also use video evidence. So for instance, you see a group of children playing. I remember from the classroom, we saw a group of children who had used pots and pans and spades in the outside play to create a lovely band. Okay, so they were taking turns, and each person knew their own part. You are hitting the pot, you're hitting the frying pan, and you're doing this. And these children came up with the most amazing music I've heard. Of course, it wasn't like, but they came up with an amazing rhythm and pattern within themselves using those things. And we felt that was a wonderful moment. So we took a video of it. Now, sometimes you take a video of maybe they've built an amazing block or something that they've built, and you think, wow, this is fantastic. Then you take a video of it and then you put it aside, of course, to put underneath the child's profile. Now, please, before you take photos or before you make any videos of any child, please make sure that you have the permission to do that. Okay, you're not just allowed to make a video picture of a picture of any child, especially using your personal mobile phone or anything. Please, it is a no and no and no. Do not use your personal device to record any child. I'm about to say without permission, but you're not even allowed. So if you're going to record a child or take a video or picture of a child, make sure that you are using a device that belongs to the school, and that child has permission for that. So in our schools, and I'm sure this applies in most schools, the parents will tick to let you know if they're happy for you to take a photograph of their child or take a video of their child for internal reasons. They will let you know. So some parents would have said no to this. So please make sure that you know that is a child who you have permission to do that before you do that, so you don't get into any problems. But again, this is one way to take observations. Now, another way to take observation is a written observation, as I said before. So you describe in a written observation, you be very careful that you don't write a whole paragraph or a long statement. So when you're writing observations, you have to be very clear, crisp and short on what it is that you observe that you need to write. And most observations has to be focused on learning rather than in the moment. So for instance, you're about to write an observation. You don't start by saying, so I went outside and I saw Lucas playing with Chioma. They were on the ground rolling, and within that time, Lucas then giggled and said this. Oh no, it's just, okay? You keep your observations very short and crisp. As I say, you focus on the learning. You focus on the learning rather than giving a whole long statement of what happened. Now, for example, you want to write an observation. I'm just going to read what I've written here. You just write, Luca used the balance scales to compare 2 buckets. He said, this one is heavier because it has more stones. Simple, okay? Very, very simple and clear. So I've told you who, and I told you what he was doing, and I told you what he said. Very simple, very crisp, very short. And what is the learning there? You can see that the child is beginning to have an understanding of load. So what is heavy and what is light? And he has a reason. He can tell you the reason why this one is heavy. So he's doing comparison. He's doing some maths there. You can see that the child is doing some maths. So he can tell you that this one is heavier because there are more stones. So that child might then further go ahead to say, okay, let me see if I can balance it. Let me see if I can balance this. What can I do? And then he might decide to take off stones from the heavier one and then to balance it. So you very clear learning of going on there. So I have written the child, okay, I have written what he did, he's comparing, and I've used the term, I've written what he said, because the language shows an understanding of the load of load. So he's told me that he has understanding, that he can understand what is heavy and what is light. So therefore, that is a classical observation, how you write a written observation. Now, when do you observe? When do you observe children? As I said, when you can have key children that you observe the whole day. So when do I observe this child? Do I just observe the child the whole day, focus on this 4? Don't forget that in our UK classrooms, you have 30 children in the class. So if you have 4 children to observe, are you going to be observing just this 4 for the whole day and forget the 26 other children? No. Okay, so you have to make sure that you're observing key moments, key things that are going on in the day. And also, if you're in a setting, for instance, an EYF setting where you have a lot of adults, so if you also let the other adults know that, okay, the other adults may also have their own key children, but if you let them know these are the key children I'm observing today, please, if you notice them do anything, or if you notice anything, please can you let me know, because the children might be around them at that moment and do something that those ones might have noticed, but you are not there. So then they can come back and feed to you, so you can write it in the book. So there are times when I'm doing activities with children, we know the key children, and then they said something, maybe when I was doing an activity with them, and then my TA will come back and they said, oh, I'm meant to be observing this child today. While you're doing your task with them, is there anything that they say, anything that you did that I can write? And I can go, oh yes, during the observation, he was able to read this for me fluently without me helping him. So he understood, he knew his diagraphs, and he knew this. That's something that she can put in the book. So you observe children. So when they're having child-initiated play, I mean, this is the best time. This is the most, what's the right word I'm trying to look for? This is the most wonderful time where you can get the most out of observation. That's why I said in my previous video that play, don't joke with play when it comes to it, EYFS and young children. Do not joke with it, because you can get a whole lot out of it. The children will learn a lot. So when they are having their child-initiated play, is the best time to observe children, because at that time they have been their self, they are manifesting in their fullest. So that's the best time to have to do observations. Now, during adult-led activities, so maybe for instance, as a teacher, you are doing small group work with them. Now you might be observing to see what your key child is doing, how they are saying, how they are reacting to the learning that is going on. Are they picking it? Are they not picking it? Or are they able to do it? For instance, there was one time I had a maths lesson, and this was my own key child to observe. And I think I can't remember what it is we were doing, but we were doing something to do with numbers. I think we were working out how many numbers. So we put out a group of dice, and then they say how many numbers. And I put out this number, and then the child went, oh, there are 8. And I said, how do you know that there are 8 in there? And the child said, well, because I know that 5 add 3 makes 8. So I can see 5 blocks here, and I can see 3 blocks here. So I know 5 add 3 makes 8. Amazing. For a reception child, you can see that that child has a good understanding of addition. So, okay, and at that age, to be able to understand and remember that 5 add 3 makes 8 without having to count, because the task was, don't count. Can you guess how much, can you guess the amount of blocks on the table? That was the task. So don't count, guess it. And then if you're not, when you guess it, we'll see if you're right or not. Then you go back and count to find how much it is. So I threw the blocks on the table, and of course, immediately the child could spot the pattern. And the child knew, well, I didn't have to count, because I could see 5 blocks here, and I could see 3 blocks here, and I knew that 5 add 3 makes 8. Beautiful. I just got my notes and I wrote like mad what the child had said and what the child had did, because I felt that that was an aha moment to show that the child had a good understanding of addition and of number patterns. So that was an adult-led activity. Now again, you observe across the day. So during the day, when they're outside, when they're inside, you just do your observations around that time. Of course, observation is a very natural thing, so it's not something that you force, it's not something that you recreate, it's not something that you go and stage an event or stage something for it to happen. No, it's a natural thing that you are observing. It's a natural occurrence that you are observing, not a staged thing, because when you stage it, then obviously it's not showing anything. So in closing, observation is a key part of high quality EYF settings. If you're a teacher, if you're a parent, if you're a school owner, I will implore you to make sure that your EYFS setting does include observations, okay? And not just observations for the sake of it, observations that are useful to build a picture about the child and the children that you're setting, to build a picture that you can use to help move the children to their next level, to be the picture to understand where it is your child is and how you can support them in their learning journey, or what things that you can do. For instance, you might notice that a child is lacking in communication skills, and therefore this is now your, as the teacher or the class or the support worker of that child, to then plan creative ways to help the child develop their communication. So observations, as I said, are a key part of any EYF settings. They are highly essential of any EYF setting. So as a teacher, I implore you, if you don't know how to do observations, I'm sure there are a whole lot of videos out there. Mine is a starting point, and a whole lot out there on YouTube, on the internet, to learn how to do these observations so that you can move your children on, develop your settings, and be the best at what you do. Okay, I hope you've learned something. I hope it's been useful. Do not forget to like, comment, share my videos, and I will see you soon. Bye.